Hey everyone, welcome back to the Prescription to Travel MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Courtney Downes, and I am super excited about today's episode. I'm joined by two incredible guests and dear friends of mine, Nickay and Elliot Wade, who just returned from an unforgettable trip to the pride and the gateway of Africa. Anytime anyone graces us with their presence here on the podcast, it's always an honor. And, I don't take that for granted that, someone is giving me their time and sharing their experiences in just such a meaningful way. And so these two are no exception. They're a truly special pair who shows us how teamwork can make the dream work. And I'm so glad that we actually found time to make this conversation happen. So our conversation will most certainly leave you thinking outside of your usual destinations when planning your next vacation. I think Africa is often way oversimplified in travel conversations. It's a continent that's so rich in diversity, more than 50 countries, countless cultures and languages and traditions. Nickay and Elliott's journey through parts of East and West Africa is really just a beautiful example of the depth and the variety that you're going to find when you just look beyond the usual narrative. So it isn't just safari and savannah. It's culture, it's luxury, it's a foodie's paradise that is packed with adventure. This trip shows why it's worth looking beyond, your typical European or Caribbean escapes, especially if you're craving something that's unique and transformative. You're also going to walk away with some super practical takeaways, tips for using your points for booking long-haul international flights, always useful, right? How thinking beyond the usual travel spots can lead to a richer and more soul-filling trip. Why being flexible when booking travel and during your trip can be so impactful, and how being just mentally prepared for the unexpected can make or break your trip. So whether you're dreaming of your own African adventure or you just love hearing about how others travel smart and purposefully, you're going to love this conversation. So let's get into it. So welcome back to the show, guys. So excited to be here chatting with you about all your recent explorations. And I'm going to have you start by telling us a little bit about yourself so that way the audience can get to know you.
So my name is Nickay McKenzie Wade, and I am an advertising executive. I have actually been in advertising for over 20 years. I won't give the exact number, but yeah, I actually work for an agency in Chicago. But living here in Las Vegas, I work remotely. Have led major advertising campaigns for major brands throughout my career, and yeah, so that's my story. I live now in Las Vegas and married to this handsome gentleman.
And I'm Elliot Wade. I'm a physician, internal medicine trained. Lived in Las Vegas for 17 years, sorry. And currently work for a large organization as a regional medical director.
Very nice. Yep, and we actually all met through Instagram, through social media, right before I moved to Las Vegas, and then they share a mutual love for medicine and sneakers. Both my husband Elliot and Nickay with the sneakers. So it was cool that we ran into each other at the mall actually, and it's
I know, I feel like I accosted you. I was like, I think that is Chris's wife. I'm gonna just say hi because I don't have friends here. I just moved here, so
Yep. And now we're the best of friends and we hang out all the time. And they took a recent trip and they're always going on trips. I feel like travel is like a way of life for you guys. So I'm excited to hear a little bit about the trip that you took recently. Well, a few of the trips, as well as how you make it all happen. So what was the most recent trip that you guys took? I think Elliot was on there trying to save lives or something.
So the most recent trip, we went to Budapest for her for work. And so in all of the routings, airline KLM has a direct flight from Las Vegas to Amsterdam, and then it's a short flight from Amsterdam to Hungary. And on that flight, there was a medical emergency about maybe two-ish hours from landing. I believe the flight from Vegas to Amsterdam is about
10.
I think it's a 10-hour flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think somewhere between 8.5 hours in, there was a medical emergency called, and I spent the last hour and a half, 2 hours in the very back of the plane, along with another doctor from Poland. She and I attending to this gentleman that had a issue, and we did not land the plane, sorry. The plane landed and waited for EMS in Amsterdam to come on and take him to the hospital.
So, what do you do in those instances? Because I know I've been, like, called, like, "Is there a doctor on the plane?" And most of the time, I just kinda sit there and hope my husband will, like, raise his hand, and he'll be the one to respond. But I did have a case where he wasn't there, and I had to respond, and luckily, it was just a lady who, like, almost had a syncopal episode, and, it was fine. I didn't really have to do much. But it sounds like from your experience, it was a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, I certainly went to the back not really expecting much. Now, I typically have my stethoscope on me in my backpack, anyway, so I grabbed it. But honestly, I wasn't thinking of a whole lot because I had my travel socks on.
Yeah.
We were sitting in business class, so you're provided socks. So I walked in the back not sort of thinking what you had said. It's gonna be some small thing. I'll be back there for 5, 10 minutes and come back. As soon as I got back there, it was like, "Oh, whatever's happening with this gentleman, it's gonna be a bit." And so the doctor from Poland, she was already there and kinda, maybe she had been there for, like, 3 to 5 minutes and kinda got me up to speed, and then we just worked through it. Essentially, he was having some significant shortness of breath and hypoxia, while on the plane, and so
So you had a pulse ox on the plane?
yeah, we had a pulse ox. I don't honestly remember if that was a part of the kit or if, one of the flight attendants had it. I imagine it was a part of the kit. And then there were a lot of different medications that were available. So without remembering, like, the overall sequence, we ended up giving him IM, Solumedrol, Lasix, and a few breathing treatments. He also had his own medications, and I did speak with his friend, who was with him on the plane and kinda able to sort of figure it out. Talked with the flight attendants who were wonderful. They communicated with the pilot. I even got asked at a certain point if we could make it to Amsterdam or if they needed to land the plane somewhere else. I don't remember where we were at that point in time, but I think I did ask how far out we were, and I think they had, if I remember correctly, we were 30 to 35 minutes. And that's kind of just where experience sort of kicks in with sort of everything, noting that, okay, like, well, I think we can get, 30 minutes and be fine. And ultimately we were. I didn't get an update after we landed, but when we got there, when we landed, he was certainly doing much better.
Yeah. So you saved a life and you saved everyone else's trip. That's very cool. Well, I always wonder because I feel like when you're on the plane, I'm like, what do you even have? Like, aside from just, I'm sure they have like an AED machine, like if someone goes into cardiac arrest, or at least I would hope that they would have that. But I'm like, you had the ability to give IM medications, intramuscular medications like an injection, and to be able to give breathing treatments and Lasix. Even if that, I'm assuming some of those were his medications, but I'm sure he didn't have just, Solu-Medrol just laying around. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty interesting, especially because, right, so KLM is based in Amsterdam, right? So sorry, the Netherlands, and all the package inserts were in Dutch. So but I couldn't read it at all, and neither could the physician from Poland. So we also not quite accustomed to the way the Solumedrol was, where it was, a powder form with a separate chamber with the saline, and I couldn't quite figure out the mechanism, how to get the saline into the powder and get it mixed. And so I just asked the guy, like, pull out the directions. It was, a huge page, and then it was just walking him through, "I need you to just look for, like, this phrase, because I don't speak or read Dutch at all." And he found it within, like, 10 seconds, and then we figured out how to activate it appropriately. So it certainly all worked out. Literally, the flight attendants essentially acted like nurses. I was, I guess, kinda in between, drawing up meds and handing the syringe to the other physician. I did at one point get the patient get the other passenger, got him into the bathroom because the Lasix hit him, fairly quickly, in terms of its onset of action. And then, like I said, when we landed, I was at the back of the plane, and I got flight attendants actually gave up that jump seat that's in the back. They gave it up for him, and then I had him on oxygen and the pulse ox, and essentially didn't feel quite comfortable leaving him while we were landing, because I didn't want the oxygen to come off or roll around or anything. So they just kind of taught me like, okay, like just kind of look out the window and kind of brace yourself. Don't pull on this door because it will pop open and then we'll have a whole other problem. But kind of just brace yourself at the back. And yeah, I was kind of landing like a surfboard. So no, I was like kind of crouched down like a surfer with no seatbelt, no seat, no nothing. But it ended up being fine. And it was, I mean, ultimately trying to make sure that this guy was okay.
Good deal. Well, that's very cool.
And I'm left in the seat next to him like, this is taking really long. This must be really serious.
So you didn't know what was going on the whole time. You just knew they called him back and that was it.
He raised his hand, they called him back, and he grabbed his stethoscope. I say steth like I'm a doctor. And then the flight attendant said, "Oh, you're a real doctor." I was like, "What'd you think he was?" So he went back and it was right. And he was gone for for the entire time before we landed. So I started getting worried. And then actually everybody deplaned, at least in business class. So they actually had everyone in economy stay, but everyone in business deplaned. So when he got back, he's like, "Oh, everyone's gone." And I was like, "Yeah, they let him deplane." And so we rushed off, and we actually had a pretty tight connection. So we had to kind of rush to get to our next flight. So
I mean, Courtney, you know how it is. Like when you're in like the midst of it, you're not really thinking about the time,
yeah,
right? You're just thinking about your next decision. What else do I need to do? Kind of going back. Well, is there anything else I can do? Where have we been? Is there anything we missed? That sort of thing. And so it wasn't till we landed and like Nickay said, like the plane was like half the plane, that sort of thing, where I really thought like, oh my gosh, like I was back there for like 2 hours. But certainly like in the moment, it didn't feel like that. And I think, that's kind of normal from the sense of, responding to patients. I don't think you're not, maybe during a code, you might be looking at your watch in terms of like trying to make sure that, you have the times down, that sort of thing, right? But outside of that, you're usually not, at least not in like what I would consider to be a true emergency. You're not really thinking about the time.
So did they compensate you for the time that you lost in business class?
Interestingly, during the emergency, honestly, fairly early in, they asked and they brought an iPad, and I'm not sure if her position was the purser or not, but a flight attendant certainly said like, "Hey, thank you for coming back here and responding to this emergency. We would like to compensate you." And like literally in the moment, I was like, I'm still trying to think about this guy. And it was maybe 20 minutes in. And they were already, saying they were going to compensate me. And I was like, I don't even want to, one, it's not why I came back here. But two, I don't even want to have to think about this right now. And they were very nice about it. So they weren't rude at all. But I guess it was sort of like the practicality of it. And so the offer was, I can't remember, was it 350 euros or a certain amount of points? I don't remember if it was 40,000 or 60,000 point.
it was 40.
Oh, maybe it's 40,000. That sounds about right. And I think I just said, I'll take the money just so that I didn't keep thinking about this. I think I thought about it for like 30 seconds and I was like, I need to do something else. And I think it was when I texted you where I was like, wait, like now that I'm texting this out, I think I'm realizing I probably should have taken the points. But honestly, like it all worked out. And I think I just used the euros. Like if I remember correctly, I got an email confirming that it was in my account with like less than 12 hours from leaving the flight. And then it was available when we flew back from Vienna
and we upgraded
to the United States. It was like already in my account. I didn't have to put in any kind of code or anything like that. It was just like linked to my account. So honestly, it was all fairly straightforward. And again, I didn't respond to the request based on like, oh, I'm probably going to get compensated. It was just the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the physician way to think about things just in general. We're like, we don't expect to get compensated necessarily. We're just here to do the work. So that's very noble of you. But I'm glad that they did compensate you for your efforts because, yeah, that was, time that you could have been spending with your wife and enjoying the remainder of your flight. And then you're able to, again, help someone. And you got some points or at least the money that you could spend on the rest of your trip. So very cool.
Yeah. Oh, and then they also, KLM, if you fly in business class on an international flight, they give you the little KLM blue Delft houses, Royal Delft, something like that. I'm probably saying it wrong. But I think they gave you an extra house. For me,
He's like, you're eligible,
funded.
saving a life. Here's a second house. It's like, okay, thanks. Sure.
So I mean, get to build up our little collection. So
Yeah.
So that's only one of like many amazing trips that you guys have taken because I'm usually there, for the ride when you're on Instagram posting and I see all Nickay's fabulous pictures and I've seen that you've recently taken up photography. So hopefully you're there taking all those fabulous pictures of your wife as well as of all the things that you're venturing to. So the thing that prompted this whole episode was the recent trip that you took to Africa. And I know that was a trip that was a long time coming. Planned pre-COVID, right?
Yeah, it was so funny because we probably back in 2019 had planned like one, I think for us we are trying to be a bit better about spending more time on the continent, like finding like opportunities to actually travel to different countries within the continent. So we had planned actually a 3-country trip back in 2019. So it would be landing in Egypt, heading to Kenya, and then from Kenya we would go to Ghana. And then COVID happened. And so we had to cancel that trip. And then I think there was sort of a lot of conversation between us about when was the right time to kind of rebook that. Just a lot of concern about sort of, stability of, travel and different countries and their response to COVID and and like, when is it really safe to kind of get back, and fly. So we finally, I think maybe like 2024, we decided like, you know what, let's rebook this trip. And I decided to be less ambitious since I'm the one kind of like doing a bit of the planning and said to myself, let's actually just do 2 countries because 3 probably was going to be a lot. And so we decided to actually book starting in Kenya. And then Ghana was our primary, like there was a country really, really wanted to visit. And so we decided like just to spend about 5 days in Kenya. And then the remainder of the trip it was 5 days in Kenya, 7 days in Ghana. So that was, we booked the travel in 2024 and then made the trip earlier this year in early May. So it was good. I'm happy that we finally made it. And I think just in a variety of reasons, it was the right time. And I think for us, just enjoyed being on the continent. So,
Right. And so how far in advance did you need to actually book for your trip this past May?
if I recall correctly, we booked at the end of 2024. So I would say probably, I don't remember the exact month, but we booked probably like maybe August or sometime like between summer and fall, we booked for the trip in May. And I think for us too, because I have a ton of American airline points with my work travel. But at the mast, I mean, I'm a like million miler for American Airlines. I think probably 500,000 points. So I was like, well, I will look into sort of the originating flight, and we really wanted to fly Q Suites. And so I spent the time sort of like on the phone, and I'm probably a bit old school with it. I'm sure there's other tools to figure out, you know, where or what's available in terms of award seats. But I just got on the phone with an agent on American Airlines, and she started like looking at dates for me and deciding, okay, well, here you can travel this date, leaving from this country, leaving from this city, and then I actually did it separately. So I booked the outbound flight, and then spent another like day on the phone with the American Airlines attendant, and we couldn't figure it out. So we ended up sort of booking the return using another source of points, I believe it was our Chase Sapphire Reserve points, or was it Delta?
No, it was American Express.
American Express. So we booked one portion of the trip using my sort of stash of miles, and then the second portion with American Express and points transfers and all sorts of stuff through Delta and KLM on the return home.
Very cool. Yeah. I didn't even know that you could do that. Like you could call and that they would actually help you find award space.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been learning more from you about like sort of some websites and tools that you can use to sort of like find award seats, and especially ones that are sort of connected through like different carriers. So American and One World and what other sort of partner airlines might actually have availability. But I just actually call American. I call them and I'll just hop on the phone with them and say, okay, I live in this city, so tell me what's available in surrounding cities. So LA. SFO, Dallas, Chicago, and then from there, we'll sort of plan it out. And they're usually pretty good about, if you find one that's having a bad day, probably not really helpful, but I've lucked out and they're just, really kind and help you sort of figure out what's available. And I try to sort of do it in pieces instead of overwhelming them for an entire trip.
And is that something that's available to, like, anyone who can call, or is it because you have status with American Airlines, you have to call, like, a special number, or
That's a good question. Because I'm a million miler, I'm like lifetime gold. I don't know. I used to be executive platinum. Platinum, I no longer, sadly. But I'm assuming that it probably is available to me because I'm gold status and I'm lifetime gold status. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But my assumption is probably they help out because they're willing to help because I have that status. So
very cool. So you got the chance to fly Q Suites, which is, like, on my bucket list of flights that I must take in the next couple of years. So I was very excited for you for that. And then you returned KLM, you said?
yeah, so we took KLM out of Ghana to Amsterdam. We intentionally kind of booked a 1-day layover in Amsterdam and KLM from Amsterdam back to Las Vegas. So our originating Q Suites flights was out of LA. So we did Vegas to LA to on Q Suites to Doha, and then Doha to Nairobi, and then we then took an intercontinental flight from Nairobi to Ghana, and then Ghana through KLM back home via Amsterdam. So quite a bit of flights, actually.
It is a lot of flying. How many points did it cost you to book Key Suites then?
So funny enough, so I think if I recall correctly, American was not bad at all. It was ended up being about 70,000 points for each of us, so 140,000 total. And I can't recall the taxes and fees, but it was less than $100. I was actually surprised and shocked that Q Suites was so inexpensive, at least from a points through conversion. It felt like it should have been more. But that wasn't bad. And then you took care of KLM, so I can't remember how that was.
I know the stories about traveling and using points, like everybody's perfect and never makes a mistake. It was the heck.
You haven't heard the story about how I used my American Airlines points to fly to Orlando instead of flying on Q Suites? I was in economy to go to Disney World. So yeah, bring it on.
Right. So I transferred American Express points, if I remember correctly, transferred it to Delta to transfer it to KLM. And I didn't quite calculate appropriately flying business all the way through. That the somehow want to tell myself actual valuation changed like as I was booking it, but that's not the case. I clearly misread it. And so I only booked in business with points on KLM, Ghana to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Vegas was in economy or premium economy. And then we paid later to upgrade, if I remember correctly.
Which is still good because just think about how much money you would have spent if you just paid cash, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I just want to be transparent that I did not book business all the way through just on points. I messed up, and I think by the time I looked at it, I didn't have enough American Express points and didn't have enough in Delta to transfer, and the calculation for me to pay for more points didn't make sense at that point.
Yeah. And I think it's important to highlight those stories too, because everything is not going to be a slam dunk 70,000 points Q Suites, because that's great, but it doesn't always happen that way. And I think a lot of times it doesn't. And I think it's still important to know that you can still use your points. Even it doesn't have to be that like amazing redemption each time. It's you using points for, that you earned for things that you would have bought anyway, or, for business flights that you would have had to take anyway for work, and being able to save your cash for something that's more valuable when you get to your destination, or, for a down payment on a house, or paying off your student loans, or investing in your retirement. So every trip doesn't have to be a slam dunk. It doesn't have to be this amazing feat. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that to take away from you saying that right now, because I think a lot of people get intimidated by it. They feel like they have to have this, amazing redemption instead of just saying, no, I went to California and I used my points for a hotel for me and my family for the weekend. Or, we just flew to Hawaii and my husband's like, are we flying business class? And I'm like, it's a 6-hour flight. No, we're going to be in economy.
Yeah, no, I think, 100%. Like I've got family that lives in Sacramento, and often when we've had to go up there, I think my aunt had her 80th birthday at the end of last year, and it is not necessarily like expensive to fly from Las Vegas to Sacramento, but I fly quite a bit with Southwest for business, and I have plenty of points. And the thought was like, well, when else am I going to use them? Why not just use these points to pay for I don't know, probably $400 round trip, or maybe it's $800 for two of us. We can obviously afford that, but hey, like, why not just use the points? I don't know, how often I'm going to be using Southwest points anyway. And so I think to your point, there's plenty of times where sometimes you're just like, I don't feel like paying for that, and I have this other currency that can cover it. Why not just cover it and use it? Like you said, it doesn't always have to be this like amazing. Like, I only use points if I go in business class or stay at the Park Hyatt or
like that. Yeah.
some other high-end hotel. And sometimes you're just like, no, like, I needed to go here. I think unfortunately we had to go to Chicago last year for a funeral, and being able to stay in a hotel. I think did we fly in and fly out the same day? I think we flew overnight on a red eye, landed, and then just needed a hotel to like rest. Yeah, and rest for an hour. And I think I used like I think I used a Hyatt credit or something like that, just to stay in a hotel for a few hours rather than like paying for it, right? And then like we were able to go to the funeral, spend the time, and then fly back. And I think that was also on Southwest, if I remember correctly. And so it was, being able to be there for a dear friend, in unfortunate circumstances, but not feel like, oh my God, like we spent all this money buying a ticket fairly last minute.
Yeah.
Right. And that happens a lot of times last minute when you're trying to book something and you find that like the ticket prices are outrageous all of a sudden, or cost for a hotel overnight is ridiculous, and you're like, oh well, I can just use these points or this free night certificate, and makes things more palatable. It makes things easier. So you booked all your flights, and then you had to find somewhere to stay. So where'd you stay?
So this is the fun part is I think I was probably the one who was more interested in going on safari. He was a bit more maybe lukewarm on the fence about it. I'll let him share why, but I was very much like, well, if we're gonna go to Kenya, I would like to. It's a bucket list thing to do. I'd love to go on safari. And so I think his stipulation was, well, if we go on safari, it needs to be luxury, like high end luxury. I'm not staying in anyone's tent. I'm not camping. I'm not roughing it. And I was like, well. I also know his taste, and I knew that what luxury, there's obviously even tiers within luxury of like, well, it needs to be really nice. It needs to feel like we are in a hotel within the campgrounds, if you will. And so
I feel like we've had these conversations about like going camping and staying in tents. And it's
exactly, we have. We have. So I think that was the funny part is that he was very clear about that. So I was like, well, I needed to figure out sort of, we knew we were going to Masai Mara. And so I needed to kind of figure out what were the options. And I had learned from a friend that JW Marriott had a property there. And I looked at the website and I was like, yep, this is it. I honestly like just looked at the rooms. I didn't even look at any of the amenities. I looked at the rooms and I said, this is it. This is exactly where he would want to stay. And I shared it with him. He was like, yep, that works. And so because that was Marriott, so like we kind of split duties in terms of like, I'm the one who will plan sort of the trips, but we split duties in terms of who books. I booked, for example, Q Suites because I have like the large stash of American airline points, but Marriott is him. He's sort of like, what, your lifetime?
I think I'm lifetime silver elite, but then also with the American Express Business Platinum, I think that always gives you gold. And so plus traveling for work and American Express points, and you can transfer into Marriott. And so I have had at least at that point in time, a decent amount of Marriott points. So we were able to book that. I think I did pay a little bit for some point to make sure, because that's one of those properties where the point redemption value makes a lot of sense. Because the per night, if I remember correctly, I think the per nights in off season, I think is still close to like $1,000. If I remember correctly. So it's like the point valuation there is pretty good. Paying for the additional points that we didn't have was still going to be less than what the room would have cost out of pocket.
Yeah, and we were there for we did it a 2-night stay because, again, remember our trip was mainly Ghana. So we landed in Nairobi, took a smaller kind of like, I call them prop planes, a propeller plane to get us to the campgrounds from Nairobi. And so we ended up, I think for us, it was sort of like trying to figure out, okay, well, Marriott is a property we want to stay at. Hyatt is actually his preferred, hotel chain, but Marriott was the property we wanted to stay at. And once we got there, we sort of figured out that it was a great choice. This service and the experience there was just unbelievable. So we're happy about that and being able to figure out sort of like, okay, well, I'll cover this. You'll handle these points. You'll handle that booking. That was sort of like how we kind of planned the entire trip together, just kind of trading off duties on who would actually book what. So depending on where we have the.
And so what was it about the rooms that made you say, okay, this is where we're going to stay?
So I think for us, it was one like, so while those rooms are at JW Marriott, while the rooms are sort of almost they're like camp lodges, almost like they look like tents, but there's a structured 4-wall edifice. So it's like, this is a room. It is not sort of it isn't, it really isn't sort of like this just erected tent on some ground.
You didn't want to be out in the wild with Mufasa?
No, not at all. That was not the move. But I think for us, it was also once I looked at the one that it was like hard walls, structured walls, and then looked at the beds. I mean, it's truly the design and beauty of the rooms, the amenities within the rooms. It was, and then there's a hot tub on the porch in front, which we did not use because I didn't certainly feel comfortable about sitting out in the hot tub while on safari. But just a hot tub, a beautiful four poster bed. It just was a beautifully well appointed room. And so as soon as I saw it and just the design of it, and that we would, there was an actual door. So that's the other thing too. A door that can be locked. So knowing that if Mufasa wanted to come to a room, he would have to work hard. So yeah, that was, primarily it. And then once we kind of decided that we wanted to stay there, it again, just the experience there was just fantastic.
Yeah. So you were able to book the Marriott in Masai Mara. How many points did it cost you per night to stay there?
So it was 140,000 points a night, and the out-of-pocket cost would have been $8,000.
Okay. And so 280,000 points total for the 2 nights would have cost you $8,000 if you just booked it with cash.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys already had Marriott points available?
Yeah, so I had a small stash, so I transferred, knowing that he was going to do the booking, I transferred some points to him, and then you ended up transferring some American Express points.
Yeah, I had Marriott points, transferred American Express points, and then I think I paid maybe $650 for the remaining points to total up to the 280,000.
8,000 versus 650 out of pocket, right? It's so.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we did the similar thing when we stayed at the Waldorf when we went to the Maldives. It was like they had nights available, but I knew if I didn't book them right then, the nights were going to disappear. And I'm like, I don't have time to figure out. And I probably could have transferred points now that, looking back, I could have transferred points from my account to Chris's account. But I'm like, where am I going to get these points? And I just, spent the $800 to buy points for that, that last night and cover it. And so there are instances such as this one where it makes sense to buy points. Obviously, you're not going to go out and spend money to buy 280,000 points because that probably would cost more than your, $8,000. But if you just need a few points to just, carry you over, then that's a great time when you want to say, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and buy these points and get what I need.
Yeah, and I think at the time of the year that we did it, that we booked, it was the end of 2024, and I didn't have any upcoming business travel like in the months leading up to the to our trip, and certainly not a significant amount of travel. And so it was kind of just looking at the landscape of, no, I'm not going to, the likelihood that I'm going to be able to earn enough points to put into the account to then pay just with points, I thought was like fairly low, if not impossible. So it just made sense. To your point, just book it there and buy the remaining amount of points that I need.
All right. And so, and my understanding is that when you're paying for those 2 nights there, that includes everything. That includes your safari as well. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. So, and it's funny, we actually didn't even realize that it also includes, so at the JW Marriott Masai Mara property, food is also, so it's all inclusive in terms of food and drinks. We did not know that. And did not see that when I was on the website. I think I was more just consumed with making sure that it was the right property for him so we could go on safari. But yeah, so everything is included. So drinks, food, obviously our room stay, the safari. What is not included is the cost to enter the reserve. So you pay $100. So we were in low season. So you pay $100 per person per day to enter the reserve and go on safari. We did 4 actual rides, 4 safari outings, if you will. And so we paid $200 for both of us the day we landed, $200 the next day, and then $200 the last day before we left. So that's not included, obviously, but everything else is included. And what also was surprising for us is wanting to, I mean, we talked a lot about kind of figuring out how we're going to, part of safari is taking great photos, right? And when we had booked the trip, they sent a note, an email to us letting us know of all the amenities and services available. And we learned quickly that they offer access to a lot of beautiful DSLR cameras, so Canon cameras actually, and long telephoto lenses. So and only for $25 rental for your entire stay. So did I get that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about a camera. Don't remember if it's a Canon. It was a Canon EOS. I think it's like a Mark D 5D, something like that. I mean, I think the camera to buy it, I believe the body itself is like $3,000, $4,000, and then all the lenses. I mean, if you were buying that on your own, it's probably easily like $5,000, $6,000, and they're just, hey, here's a $25 rental, and then they'll send one of the photographers out with you, and then you can swap lenses, and they can give you tips, that sort of thing. So it's almost like honestly, it felt like Canon has like some kind of deal with them where it's like, hey, like let these people touch all this stuff for $25, and next thing you know, they'll want to buy these cameras when they get back home. I mean, to the point where they even provided a
A
camera backpack and everything. Like it was literally like
backpack.
all I needed to have was my own memory card, and even that they would provide for you.
Yeah, well, Chris saw the pictures and he was like, "Oh, so Elliot's taking on, like, photography," and at some point he was interested in it too, so, like, he's been, like, talking about this camera. So that wasn't your camera, that was so the camera and the lens belonged to the resort.
Mhm.
Yeah, all of it. I used to dabble back in the day, so I do have a smaller Canon from probably now when I was in medical school. So I mean, we're talking I graduated. Did I graduate 2005? Yeah, so 20 years ago. Right, so the camera is like that pulled, but it felt kind of like I guess like riding a bike. It didn't take that long for me to get up to speed, and the camera is so new and so good. I mean, I think I sent you the link, of maybe like 50 something pictures, but if I remember correctly, I think in the span of just a couple of days, I think I took 1,000 shots, if I remember correctly.
I'll just say that I think what was amazing is you asked like what was included in that price, and while the cameras weren't included, it was to me you pay $25. It felt to me like it was like it's just a really small fee for having access to something that actually is quite expensive, and also I think alleviating that for their guests, alleviating that having to travel with all that heavy equipment. I can imagine like people who truly are like photographers they enjoy that as a hobby. Traveling with a lot of equipment is pretty heavy. And we were told that we had to ensure that our baggage and our luggage was quite light in order for us to take the plane from Nairobi to the reserve. We had a limitation in terms of, luggage. So all those things considered, it felt like it was included, like being able to have access to all that amazing technology and being able to use it for the entire stay. If we were there for a week, we would have had cameras for an entire week only for $25. So
Yeah, sounds like a win. So you were there for 2 days and you did 3 different game drives?
we did 4. We landed in Nairobi on Qatar Airways, took a cab from the main airport to the smaller regional airport. We immediately got on another flight after having gone from Vegas to Halea, Doha to Nairobi. So took another flight. We landed at probably around like 11 a.m. and we got there and probably freshened up or an afternoon, like evening drive. And that was our first one. And then the next morning, we did a morning drive, an afternoon drive, and then the next day, our departure day, we did a morning drive before we left. So we did 4 total.
Okay. And so I imagine you get to see different things if you're out in the morning versus if you're out at night, and that's why they do separate sessions?
Yeah, it's funny because I think they will stay out as long as you want. You meet your driver at the airstrip when you land, and that is your guide, I should say, not driver, your guide when you land, and that guide stays with you for the entire time, and your guide will stay out for as long as you want. But yes, they typically recommend sort of a morning drive and an evening drive because yes, you do see, a lot different activity. For example, in the afternoon, the lions might be less active because they might have already fed in the morning, and they're going to be a bit lazy. Versus in the morning, you might find, mothers with their babies kind of, out pretty early. looking for food, moving, whatever, what might be the situation at that time. But the reality is you're going to have different experiences at different times of day. I think one of the drives that we actually went on, they radio, so the guide is radioing with the campground, and they'll tell them, "Hey, we heard there's a cheetah in this area, or there's a leopard in this area." And one of our drives in the afternoon, we were told, our guide was told that actually was it a cheetah actually had just killed an antelope, and he was basically feasting on it. And so we were able to, and that was in the afternoon drive. So we were able to go see that. Like he drove right up to it, and we watched this cheetah, had a fresh kill essentially.
Yeah. I'll drive up too after. I'm like, "You're already eating, so it's okay."
Yeah, exactly. We were less concerned given he had his meal and he was enjoying it. But there was probably about 5 cars when we rolled up. So, I mean, that's what's really nice about the experience is that they're radioing one another. And then typically when other campgrounds see a car in the distance, they'll kind of drive up thinking that, hey, they must have found something. So, with the intention of hoping to see something. So, that was our experience. But yeah, the morning drives I thought were great only because it's just you see it's sunrise. And then again, you just see we saw a lot of elephant herds and matriarch herds with their babies, and it was beautiful, really, really nice. I'd love for him to talk about it a little bit because I felt like I was already kind of all sold on a safari. So for him,
Before you got there, yeah.
yeah, he was again on the fence about it, and then I think left feeling like I'll let you say.
Yeah, I think it was really cool to see it differently than like going to a zoo, right? Like literally seeing them in their habitat, just doing whatever it is that they do without really any human influence, right? Like, and I think beyond just seeing the animal is just the beauty of Kenya, the Maasai itself, just absolutely breathtaking. I think it's one thing, at least for me, like one thing to see it, on YouTube or on some video, and then it's a whole other to like actually like be there and witness it yourself.
Absolutely. And so what was your hesitancy going in of going on a safari?
I don't think I had the appreciation for like what the experience was going to be. I don't know that I had. I was going to say I don't know that I had any preconceived notion. I think my preconceived notion was like this is going to be boring and just there's going to be a lot of people around.
Yeah.
And then the roughing it piece of right. I mean, I think in some ways we work so hard that I'm not particularly interested in having a rough experience if I can avoid it. Right. And so like not that I've never been in a tent and not that I've never like roughed it before because I have. I had a good friend from high school that for his the bachelor party we met here in Vegas and then we rafted down the Colorado River down into Arizona over the course of a weekend. Right. No showers, right? Sleeping in tent and in sleeping bags. So I've definitely done that, and it wasn't necessarily bad, but certainly when I came back home, I was told I needed to take a shower, right? And I didn't recognize like what I smelled like, right? And so my thought was like, I'm not flying however many miles, to Kenya to have that experience, right? I'm definitely what's one more thing that's funny about that bachelor party, I guess, or weekend. My friend's now wife actually said, "Are you sure that Elliot's like, you guys need to make sure that he's okay, right? Because it can't just be hot dogs and sandwiches or whatever, right?" And so, yeah, I was like, I want to go there. I'm not necessarily looking for, to be fanned and fed grapes or anything like that, but I'm not trying to be unreasonably hot, and I'm not trying to be sleeping in the sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Right, or whatever that looks like, and the experience at that JW Marriott was beyond amazing, right? Like, I mean, I would definitely go back without an issue, and I think for myself, I could definitely see just from the photo angle, right, of being able to take all those photos, that for me was like fairly relaxing, and I hadn't anticipated that. Like that's where I was like, oh, like this is taking all these pictures and being able to see in real time. Because another thing we did mention was that those photographers, you can come back every day and immediately look at your pictures on a whatever Apple monitor they have and kind of go through, and they started editing the photos, but just made like a separate drive of within
You preferred.
of just like, hey, here's all the good photos that you took. So they're kind of curating for you like in real time.
Which is nice because I think you can do that in the moment, and then you can take all these pictures, and then they just sit on your phone, and you never look at them again because there's so many, and you're like, "I took, like, 8 pictures of an elephant's leg. Did I really need to take that many pictures of it?" So, that's really cool that they were able to get that set up for you guys before you left.
Something he said that just sparked a thought I'd want to share is he said, there might be too many cars around. We actually, because we were at low season, I asked our guide, what do you prefer? You've been doing this for so many years. Like, what do you prefer, high season, low season? And he said, I prefer low season. He's like, there's less cars. There's less guests collectively across all the lodges in the reserve. And so I think the perception is that if you go on safari, you need to go on high season in order to see all the animals. We saw the big five in 2 days. And while we also had a really good guide, so he knew the park. She didn't even call it a park, the reserve. He knew the reserve really well. He knew what areas certain animals were, typically stay in. And so he made it his mission to ensure that we saw the big five in the 2 days. And I mean, can I tell you the excitement we had when we were, what was left was the black rhino, and we were trying to find a black rhino the night before and struggled. And so then the next morning, we went out, on our last drive, and he's like, I'm determined to get you guys to see a black rhino. And we're driving around, Elliot and the other guests that we were sort of traveling with we were on safari with, they both turned to the right and spotted the black rhino. And we were like, oh my God, we're so excited. We just need, and so, but the ability to see all these animals in a short amount of time and not feel like we were competing with a lot of other cars and a lot of other, guests across the reserve was great. It made it for a more relaxing, I think, experience for us. So a tip, if anyone wants to go on safari, I'd say don't be concerned about going during low season. You'll still see lots of animals, especially if you go to a good lodge with a great guide. Our guide was fantastic. I would recommend him. Jacob, shout out to him. He was great.
Shout out to Jacob if you can make a request.
Yes.
Although he's moving to
Oh, yeah.
the Four Seasons?
He's being poached by the Four Seasons.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're going to the Four Seasons, look for Jacob. I'm sure you'll have a phenomenal experience with him there. So tell me, what exactly are the big five?
The Big Five is sort of a term that's used on safari. It is just the main sort of 5 animals that you should see when you're on safari. So it is the black rhinoceros, the elephant, a leopard, water buffalo, and lion. So we saw all 5 animals across the 4 drives in 2 days that we were there.
Okay, good to know. So you'll be looking for those things. So no cheetah? Is it no cheetah or no leopard? There's a leopard, but no cheetah.
We saw both leopard and cheetah, but in terms of the big 5, the leopard is one of the big 5. And the leopard that we saw, just a nice little anecdote, is her name is Luluka. She apparently is a very popular leopard in the reserve. Actually if you look her up on Google, she is very famous. There's stories about Luluka and the cubs that she's raised and everything. So it was pretty cool to actually see her.
So how do they know who she was, or like how do they identify?
They being the safari guides within the Masai Mara Reserve, they know some of the animals, and I don't know who names them. I didn't ask that question, but some certain animals have names, or if they don't know the names, what they do know are even just like, hey, this is a pack of 3 cheetahs, for example, that were born last year, and it was 2 girls and 1 boy, and the boy is spying. So they know the stories of some of the animal groups, or like, this pride of lion lives here and there's another pride in this part of the park. So they just are familiar, but some of the animals do have names. So Luluka is a very famous one. She has a name. So
very cool. Did you guys happen to run into any wild animals while you were at the hotel, or do they all stay out in the wild?
Good question. We, on our literally check-in, on our way to a room, we saw a pack of blackface. They probably have a proper name, but blackface monkeys. So we ran into those on our way to our room after check-in. And then one night was on our way back. So they actually strongly recommend and don't allow really guests to walk to their rooms by themselves at night. You have to request someone to escort you either from your room or to your room when it's dark. And so I think it was on our way back to our room, the escort has a flashlight, and he kind of lifted his flashlight up, and we saw a hyena on the walking path to our room. And so the hyena kind of looked at us, we looked at him, and he just like bolted off. So I was like, wow, they just are roaming the property.
Just roaming free. Yeah, I think if they told me that, I'm pretty sure I would just be I'm like, oh, sun's going down. It's time to stay in the room. Does anyone really sit outside and use the hot tub? Like anyone at the resort?
I didn't notice anyone using the hot tub.
I think the couple that we were with, I think basically
Oh yeah, at least
at some point.
Kiss me in car.
I think it depends on your tolerance for risk.
Yeah, we have a low
And I think for us it was I don't know that it was like elevated and what I don't think that we would have been using the hot tub anyway. So I don't know that was something for us that was really going to get used sort of in that way. But maybe I don't know, maybe if we were there for like a week.
I was gonna say we were there longer. Yeah.
Differently about it. But you just have to understand that hey, there's this risk that you're out there and then a monkey might come by or something like that. I don't know if the hyena would go over in that area, but it's not like it was that far from our room.
No,
either,
it wasn't.
So.
Yeah.
Sure. Is there anything that you wish you had known before you got there? Like, did you have to get like certain vaccinations and like other things that people might want to know before they decide to take on something like this?
We did have to get a yellow fever vaccine. That wasn't too big a deal. And certainly, I think you had planned it for us well in advance.
Yep.
I think otherwise, I think that's the only vaccine that we needed. Definitely had to bring I think we were told we needed to bring our proof. I think maybe they asked at the airport. Or I showed something, and that was kind of that. It didn't really go beyond that. And then we took our infectious disease doc here in Vegas. A shout out to Dr. Rabentish. She just recommended that we take malaria pills, given that we were going both to Ghana and to
Kenya.
Yeah, that we take the anti-malaria pills for basically essentially the duration of our trip.
Yeah. I went to Uganda like years ago, and I think it gave me like mefloquine or something. And I'm pretty sure I was like hallucinating like the first night when I was taking it, because I remember we were in Uganda for a while, and then we went to lodge on safari, and I think I started taking it when we went to the safari. And I was there, and I woke up that night, and I swear I thought there was someone in my room that was trying to kill me. And I'm not, and I was like, and I think, and like we got there, and it was, after like living on a very like sparse diet for like, weeks at a time, eating the same thing. And then we got there, and there was this big buffet, and I ate all this food, and I was like, maybe I'm just feeling sick because I ate too much. But I was like, I swear there's someone in my room, and he's standing right there. And I got up, and no one else knew what I was talking. So I'm convinced that it was like the anti-malarial drug that they gave me that made me hallucinate. But yeah, so.
We didn't have any moments like that, but that's quite interesting. No, I mean, I think the only other thing I wish you had mentioned, you were talking about this, you felt like just how soul-filling going to the continent would be. I think you have a sense, and we, like I said, going into it, wanted to be more intentional about visiting more countries in the African continent. I feel like we spend a lot of time, the collective sort of we in the U.S. travelers want to go to Europe or Asia. And not a lot of folks go to Africa as a continent or the countries within Africa, primarily because I think the way the media sort of, portrays it is that, it's dangerous, or it might be, there's less, structure, or the infrastructure is terrible. Or I think for us, going there was just a wonderful feeling to step off a plane and being the majority. I think, not necessarily considering that, but at the end of the trip, wow, I don't think that was probably the part of the trip that felt the most just fulfilling and rewarding, is that being on the continent and seeing people like us everywhere within, whether it's advertising, the people walking the streets, even our safari guide, Jacob, is a Black man. It was nice just to be there and being amongst our people and feeling like, it was great. So,
yeah. And I think I remember having the same sentiments, like getting there and feeling like I don't stick out like a sore thumb. Like I look like, everyone asked me, where are you from? Like they were, but are your parents from here? I'm like, no. But maybe, are your grandparents from here? I'm like, no. But, you just kind of blend in because you're like family. Like at some point, someone was probably from here, And so I think, again, share that same thought process, and getting there and seeing how everything was so lush and so green and so pretty. And I remember thinking, like, I don't think I've ever seen a place this beautiful in the U.S. And I think that was like the second time I ever left the country. And, I was there for a month, and I got to experience so many different things. And I was like, man, I've been waiting to go back since then. And I think talking with you guys has certainly kind of lit the fire, and I'm talking to Chris now, like, hey, what are we going to do next?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add, but
Yeah, I think they're definitely like figuring it out what works for you. And I think I'm, to her point, like interested in going back and seeing as many like honestly, I think at some point I sat down and tried to figure out like, well, what's the routing to get to this country and what's the routing? I mean, just all over, different sides of the continent of Africa, trying to figure out, well, can we squeeze in 5 days here? Can we squeeze in a week here? I think in a way that there's nothing wrong with going to the Caribbean. There's nothing wrong with going to Hawaii. There's nothing wrong with going to Mexico. But I'm like, well, but we can figure that out. Well, then, like, let's start trying to figure out getting back to the continent, and be, to her point, be more intentional about it. Because I think it really was just, I don't know, soul filling. I think is one way, but like I think another way to think about it is you don't carry a burden when you go there, right? Of like you're just there and you're with your people, and nobody at any point is questioning why you're there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was actually great because I did worry of like, oh, how would Africans treat us as Black Americans? And I certainly at no point did I feel unwelcomed, and I certainly did feel very welcomed by the folks in Nairobi, and obviously Jacob, our safari guide, who was just so phenomenal as a just personal person. And then even in Ghana, we felt like everywhere we went, we never felt sort of ostracized, and even like meeting the Masai Mara people, or the Maasai people, I should say, meeting them and being welcomed into their village. And just every step felt like a return home, if you will. So that was probably, again, the best part of the trip, that feeling.
And they welcomed you into their home.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'll let him share some of that because I think you had some intentional conversations about sort of health related topics in his village. But we took an afternoon in our 2 days after all the game drives and everything else. We took an afternoon to go to a Maasai village and meet. And there was one gentleman who's sort of like the representative and the person whom is sort of almost the guide, if you will, within the village. And so we met him, and he took us around, explained their customs. He explained, he actually invited us into his space, his room, his home, and we sat down and we talked with him about all of, what village life is like, what going to school is like. We talked about, I think, a conversation ensued about sort of health related topics specific to villagers, what cooking looks like, how a home is made, how fire is made, like all those things that sort of felt like, I think they were just very sort of like natural conversations that we ended up having with him. But he was very informative, but in a way that just felt like, I want you to understand more about us. And we really enjoyed that. I think you had a really deep conversation with him he was talking about women within the village who were like pregnancy and the struggles that they were having in terms of getting.
Yeah, I think he just had not, I'm going to say like, it's not like he had a realization while I was there, but he noted that his struggle or his concern was trying to honor the older people and the traditions and customs of the village while also understanding what's currently happening in terms of public health. And so one of the things that he noted was that the local hospital is, for here in America, is not that far, 30 miles. But in a place where I think the entire village has maybe like 3 motorcycles and nobody has a car, getting to and from the hospital, that's 60 miles round trip with your pregnant wife on the back of a motorcycle on unpaved roads. He was like, everybody knows that's not a very good thing to do. And so I think at least one of the considerations he had was trying to get enough money to have a vehicle for the village in order to facilitate those prenatal visits. And then another thing he had noted was water, right? And I think if I'm getting it correctly was, you continue to use this same spot in the river because that's what your father used and your grandfather used and your great-grandfather and the great-grandfather before that, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the spot in the river that you get the water, that you bathe, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And even understanding, hey, these animals are upstream and they're, using the restroom in the river and it's coming downstream, trying to get people to understand that and change anything. He said, felt like a losing battle in many ways, and so was kind of struggling with knowing that there's this public health angle, but you're fighting against the traditions and the customs of the place, and trying to get people to sort of figure out and how or sort of what that looks like, was a struggle for him.
Yeah. He also talked about, I'll make this quick, but he talked about his father, who is, pretty, has a significant, position within the village and the community. His father has 8 wives, and we asked him, was like, well, so obviously, like, polygamy is a tradition, a custom within their group, within their community, within the people of the Maasai people. And I asked him, I was like, well, do you have one wife now? Or are you planning on taking a second or third? He was like, no. He said, I'm comfortable with one wife. Wives are expensive. So he was very much sort of had this progressive view of life and wanting to do things his way, and was actually quite proud that he was the first high school graduate amongst his people, and has an interest in going to college. So I think public health is what he wants to, he wants to study. So that was great, actually. Just that afternoon spent with the village and the people, the Maasai people, it was fantastic.
Yeah. So was it hard to go from that back to like your luxury accommodations? Like, did it change how you felt about being there, or?
I don't know. I actually know.
No, I think that if I remember correctly, I think that night we had at the hotel or at the lodge had a traditional Maasai meal. And so in some ways it made it feel
Like
it kind of connected it all.
Yeah.
Because they were so most of the people that worked at the hotel, not most, but there were plenty of people who worked at the lodge that were Maasai people. And so they seemed to really take joy that we were eating like the traditional food. And I get the sense that like it's made for Western palates, so that's not lost on me. But they seem to have like a little ceremony, and then seem to really take a lot of joy and pride in us eating their food. So and I thought in many ways it almost felt full circle. And so it didn't feel as like off-putting as like, oh my God, I just saw this, and then now we're here experiencing this other thing. In some ways it felt like we're a part of the land, and almost in some ways like advancing it. It's probably not exactly the right term, but it didn't feel as off-putting as it does kind of saying it now.
Well, I will say the juxtaposition of that experience and then heading back to our lodge wasn't something we had considered, but what I did consider in the moment was it gave me great perspective and appreciation for what we have. So more so considering the lives we live here in the US and the things that we put a lot of priority in, or that we find to be really important. And I'm like, their homes are like, they live a really simple life and they're very happy. And so I think that perspective was great for me, is a reminder of like some of the things that we complain about really aren't are things that they should be probably first world problems, as we like to say, right? So
yeah, and interestingly enough, I did recently interview a physician for a position at one of my facilities, who's actually Maasai. So it actually ended up with a connection point for us. Once she said that she was from Kenya, and then I kind of like mentioned like that I had just been there, and then she's like, "Oh, that's actually like where I'm from." Like legitimately, she said she grew up the same exact way.
Wow. And so from there, you ventured on to Ghana?
yeah, we took an intercontinental flight from Nairobi to Ghana. No points. It was just a local airline. I think it was Kenya Airways. And so we paid out of pocket for that, and then landed in Ghana. And Ghana was about a 5-day stay. There aren't major hotel chains in Ghana, so we wanted to in Accra. Thank you. So we did stay at Kempinski. So not a chain that I would say that we're familiar with here in the US, but I've heard of it. That was the nicest hotel chain in Ghana, or the hotel brand in Ghana, in Accra. And so we stayed there. That was also paid out of pocket, which is nice. Again, I think to the point you made earlier, we save money by using points on some of the major travel, the hotel in Masai Mara. So then that freed up some money, obviously, to be able to pay for our hotel in Ghana or in Accra. Or the flight from Nairobi to Accra. So yeah, that was great. So
It was pretty easy to get into the airport, getting to Accra.
uh, So the landing in Accra was fine. I would say we had a very interesting experience at the Nairobi airport on our way to Ghana. I have never had to, so our driver took us to the airport. There were sort of like almost maybe 4 or 5 security points. One of which was we had to get out of our car and then walk through a security. So like we were approaching the airport. We got out of the car, walk through sort of like this building with a metal detector, and our driver continued to drive with our luggage through sort of like a toll, and then he picked us up on the other side. I've never had that happen. And then when we got there, we went through a security checkpoint right at the door of the airport, then went through another security checkpoint, so like almost like their version of TSA upstairs, and then a third checkpoint to get into the waiting area for our flight. So I think I got all of those right? Yeah, like 4.
Yeah, it was a lot. And certainly it was unexpected, but it was also, definitely were recommended by many people to make sure you get there in plenty of time. And I think that's, at least for the Nairobi airport, is definitely a reason why to get there early, because there's so many checkpoints.
Yeah.
Did they ever explain why they took your luggage and you had to walk?
Our driver didn't say why or understand why. He just knew that was sort of that was what was customary. And it was odd for us because he didn't tell us beforehand. So when we got there, he's like, "You need to get out of the car." And we're like, and
Now, mind you, there's tons of other people are also getting out. So it wasn't as though we were the only ones. So it was definitely like we were in line with a bunch of other folks. Some people actually got off a bus and did the same thing.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, if you just don't expect it and you're on the bus and then all of a sudden the bus is taking off with your stuff, you're like,
Yeah, because certainly when he started pulling over, it was like, we're not anywhere near the airport, so what are you doing?
Yeah, it was a little concerning. I was more so concerned. I was like, he was driving us around a couple days in Nairobi, so I trusted him enough. But then I was like, wow, he has our luggage and we have to walk, and he's driving through with our luggage. I hope we're gonna get our luggage back. I was really freaking out, and then he picked us up right on the other side. So I was just gonna say, to answer your question, that was probably the only thing that was a bit of a struggle. I mean, it's not a struggle. It was a lot. But other than that, everything else was quite smooth, and we paid to upgrade our seats and Kenya Airways from Nairobi to Accra. So that was actually nice to have a bit of like just continue our sort of like business class travel.
yeah. How long of a flight is it?
About 6 hours.
Okay, yeah. So it's a pretty decent flight to, yeah. And then you got there and things went smoothly getting to the airport?
Yeah, no, smoothly when we landed. Actually, no issues through customs, through like nothing. It was quite easy. And then we coordinated with a driver. A friend had given me a recommendation for a driver, and he was waiting for us outside, and he was fantastic. We had already made arrangements to go to I would say a tailor. I feel like there's a better word to describe a bespoke
Clothier, I guess.
yeah. Atelier. So we had already made arrangements, and so we knew that we had to go to his store immediately in order to have the clothes that he wanted made in time for so we can pick them up at another trip. So our driver actually was fantastic. He took us there and he waited outside in the humid Ghana heat and the humid Accra heat. I would say the temperature difference between Nairobi / Masai Mara and Accra, just night and day. It's so humid, very Miami humid, like that thick sort of just sometimes unbearable heat. So he waited outside for us. And while we took almost an hour and a half for him to get measured, pick out fabrics, and decide what he wanted to have made. So our driver was fantastic, and then took us to our hotel after.
So how did you find this atelier?
Lovely Instagram. Funny enough, I follow a couple of Ghanaian influencers, and I noticed that this brand was tagged a couple times. And so I did some research and then found out that we could contact them through WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp is it's honestly the way you communicate with everyone once you're out of the country. And so I WhatsApped him, and he said, "Oh, absolutely. When you land, come straight here." And he was very eager to help us get everything he wanted made within the time frame that we had. And I told him we would land on Monday and leave Sunday. He's like, "Well, we're not open Saturday and Sunday, so we'll have to get your clothes to you by Friday." And I was like, "Is that enough time?" He said, "Yeah, you would." And then you would have to probably pay a bit of a premium. Honestly, but the premium for having the clothes rushed and the quality, it is still less expensive, I think, than if he did that here in the US. So
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see some of these pieces.
Yeah, like, I mean, over time, I think in the past, I've gone on Etsy and found a couple different tailors on the continent to make stuff, but you're sending them measurements and you don't know you're looking at pictures, but you don't get to touch and feel the fabric and really see what it looks like under the light. So you kind of just, you know, hey, I like this picture that you posted. Can you make this? What I paid on Etsy was the same that I paid with this rushed order in Accra, and having somebody, actually walk me through the fabrics, say that they talk about like, well, I think I want this. And he's like, well, not with this fabric. You can do that with this one. Or, hey, like, he's literally calling the warehouse and finding that they don't have any more of this fabric and whatnot. And so for the price and actually being there, and I think it ended up being not, I know it was higher quality and much better fitting than anything that I've had made before. Not that I don't like the stuff that I had made before, but the difference is so stark that now and now we have a relationship where he literally was like, I'll send you more pictures and fabrics like over time and you can pick more stuff out. And now that I've got as long as you don't change size, like I've got your measurements and everything, and you can have more things made. So it's actually like pretty cool from that perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. How neat to just be able to go through the experience of that as well,
Oh yeah, no, it was really cool and just I mean great service. So that was fantastic. That feel like to land and immediately have that level of service. And the eagerness for him to get it for him to get it done within the time frame was great.
To get it done. Yeah. And so what else did you guys do there?
It's funny. We were so tired, I think, from the excitement of the safari and the number of flights we took that we ended up we did a lot more relaxing in Ghana, a lot more sleeping. We didn't do a ton of sightseeing. We went to a museum. I think for us, the thing that was most important, we wanted to eat a lot of West African food. And so we ate to our heart's content. Jollof, wache, fufu. I'm not from America. I was born in Panama. So for me, Malta is a drink that I drank a lot when I was a kid. And you certainly have to develop a taste for it if you didn't grow up with it. For me to land and have.
So the Trinis love Malta, apparently.
Oh, yes. I know Chris probably. So, I mean, that's a drink that I love. And he's like, that's not my jam. But I'm not surprised. A lot of my American friends don't love it. But for me to have Malta on just like readily available everywhere, or sorrel is a drink which is hibiscus flowers. So sorrel they call it bisak in Ghana. So I feel like just a lot of the foods in the diaspora, yuca fries or plantains. We were so happy. We were so happy to eat, goat, this, curry, this. It was so good. So we just did a lot of eating, a little bit of sightseeing. We went to a botanic garden. We went to a museum. We went to a beach club just to see the coast. And that was it. We debated whether or not we wanted to go to the slave castle. I really wanted to go, and Elliot didn't, and I actually respect his reasons for why he didn't want to go. I can understand sort of the pain that those experiences sort of bring about because you are, being reminded of what our ancestors went through, and so he was sort of too keen on going. Although I wanted to go for a different reason. I felt like it sort of is a way to pay respect for what they went through. But we agree that because it was such a far drive, it's basically almost 3 hours each way from Accra to the coast to see the slave castle. And I didn't want to go myself, so we didn't end up going. But it's certainly something I'd love to do at some point if we go back to Ghana. Maybe we'll go back with friends, and my friend and I will go, and he'll stay back. But yeah.
Yeah, I think to be clear, like it's not that I don't respect and
you
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think I'm no longer interested in reliving trauma. And so for me, I'm like, I get that it happened. I just don't feel like exposing myself to it is worth the potential trauma.
Yeah. Yep, I can understand that. Yeah. No, and I think even when we were in Curacao, it was the same thing. They have like the slave museum, and you went there, and it's a sight to see. And you see all these things, and you're just a lot of things that were very like triggering for me that I didn't expect to see, because you hear about it, you read about it in books, and you know what it was like for Africans who were brought to America. But to see it from that standpoint, and to go in and to actually see the artifacts and the stuff that they went through, like I could totally see why you would be like, no, I'm gonna sit this one out. I see your point as well, just seeing it and kind of paying your respects to your ancestors and what they went through. So yeah, it could go either way, but yeah, if it's a 6-hour car ride, then I might say, you know what, maybe not today. So
And that was a deciding factor. I think if it was maybe an hour each way, I might have decided to go on my own. But it certainly isn't an experience I'd want to experience alone. But knowing it was 6 hours, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not doing that. So we'll figure it out at some point. But yeah, that was Ghana in a nutshell. Honestly, just a lot of eating, a lot of hanging out. Nothing really special to share per se. But I think,
The photo shoot was special.
oh yeah, he's right. I think that's we actually, yes. So we splurged on doing a photo shoot in Ghana. I wouldn't say maybe it's a tradition, but we did a photo shoot in Japan, in Tokyo, or actually in Kyoto, sorry. And then it's nice to kind of look back at those photos and like, oh, this was a commemoration of our trip, if you will. But it was nice to find a great photographer in Ghana who was just amazingly professional, just wonderful, went all out. He got to the location before we did, scoped everything out. And we did a photo shoot with him, and the photos turned out beautifully. So
yeah, did you use any of your pieces that you probably well, they were ready on Friday. You probably didn't have them in time, but
No, and it was honestly, it was so hot and humid that I wouldn't have wanted, even if they had been ready, I wouldn't have wanted to,
sweat.
sweat through them and ruin them. But no, the experience was amazing, and he, Shafiq, who was the photographer, ended up kind of being like a mini, like, tour guide as well, because he took us afterwards. He took us to
A grocery store.
I think maybe 2 grocery stores, but kinda like his thoughts on like, "Hey, like, here's where, like, me and my friends go to eat," or, "Here's, this place to pick up," 'cause we wanted some spices.
I wanted suya spice. Suya is a West African spice, and I love to buy spices in different countries and cook with them. So I wanted suya, which is funny, the name of our dog. So I wanted suya spice, and so I wanted to like travel back with that. We intentionally I wanted some masks, wanted some spices, and then he wanted to buy some, his clothes that he wanted to get made. So we did some shopping. So, but Shafiq, our photographer, took us to a couple grocery stores to get suya spices because he knew that's what I wanted. And then actually, the last day of our trip, he said, "Hey, I have a gift for you." And then he came to our hotel and gave me a bag of like plantain chips, different types of plantain chips, different sort of Ghanaian snacks and Ghanaian chocolates. And he's like, thank you for the time that we spent. And he was a great, great photographer. If you're going to Ghana and you want to get photos done, Shafiq is fantastic. So
yeah, it's very interesting to see like all the similarities between like all the Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latina cultures, come together. There's all the things you mentioned. I'm like, yeah, we go to Trinidad, and some of those things sound familiar. And then you named your dog. I imagine you named the dog after the spice.
well, our first dog is Paprika. And that was a name she came with when we rescued her. And then when we got a second dog, we wanted to name him another spice. And so we're trying to sort of figure out what would make sense given his coloration and like just his personality. And then I think he actually had the idea, like, why don't we name Suya? And I was like, oh, like that's a West African spice. And so no one really knows it. So everyone's like, what is Suya? So
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if it was like Panamanian or if that was, but no, West African.
yeah, it's West African. It's a peanut based spice.
So have you guys been to West Africa before, or was this your first trip there?
This was our first trip for both of us. This was his first time on the continent, my third time on the continent. I've been to South Africa and to Morocco. I had never been to East Africa or West Africa, so that was a first for both of us actually. Because I want to go back and go to Ethiopia and all the a few other East African countries and a few other West African countries. So this was our first time on either side of the continent. So that was really cool.
And then getting there, did you need visas to enter either of the countries, or?
Good question. Yeah. So the Kenya does an ETA, so an electronic visa. The price was pretty inexpensive. If I remember correctly, it might have been like 25 per person. I might get that cost wrong, but it wasn't pricey. The Ghanaian though visa is a bit more extensive of a process. You have to go through sort of filling out your application online, printing it out. You have to take a photo, so a passport size photo. You have to mail your passport in so they can actually, one, process your application, and then they will stick your visa into your passport. So you're without your passport. I would say we probably didn't have our passports for about 3 weeks. We mailed it to the Ghanaian embassy in DC. They processed our application. And then it's nice because they do send you updates online saying, oh, we received your package. It's being processed. the first step of the process has been passed. Your application is approved. Now we're going to go through and approve your visa. So it's like a multi-step process, but they at least give you some updates electronically. You pay actually for postage for them to mail it back to you. You actually also have to submit that within your with your application. And so they mailed it back to us, and I was very thrilled and happy to receive our passports back because it's a little nerve-wracking to not have your passport for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it is, especially if you need to go somewhere on the go and you guys travel all the time. And I'm sure things come up where it's like, okay, well, we need you to be in XYZ in, 2 weeks. And you're like, what do I do?
And what do I do? I had no passport. So I did the application online and mailed everything in. And thank goodness it actually worked out. We had no issues. And so that was, I think, about like $60 per person. And then we also had to pay for the postage. So
Is there anything, I guess, any last parting words that you have for anyone who's interested in planning such a trip? Because it seems like there are a lot of logistics and a lot of things that had to come together for you to be able to book something like this, especially when you had to work around, okay, I found this flight and now I have to find this hotel and now I have to do all these things. So what advice would you have for anyone else who's looking to plan a trip like this?
I think for me, the way I approach like planning these trips is like being flexible, especially if you're using, points, miles, being flexible. I think you might have sort of a sense of like when you want to travel. Hey, I want to travel in the summer or in spring. But when I call American Airlines to use my American Airlines points, I don't necessarily go in with like, we have to leave on this day. I kind of go saying, hey, when is the award travel available? And so that flexibility of being able to sort of like just know that we might not leave on the day that we want to be, or you might not be able to book the travel and day you would prefer to leave. So that having to sort of have that mindset going into it is really important. And also not necessarily being wed to leaving or the outbound flight originating from the place that you live. So we were comfortable flying to San Francisco or to LA or to Chicago to take the first flight, if you will. So I think that's another thing is, again, in terms of flexibility, you might not necessarily always find some award travel out of the state that you live in, but that's okay, especially if it means I pay a small amount to get to that city to then start our dream trip. So those are two things I'd say in terms of advice.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add. I mean, for us, we left on a Tuesday. I don't know that I would
Exactly.
normally say like Tuesday is a great day to travel. It's just that's the day that it worked. As far as getting that award flight. And I think the other part is it takes so long to get there, right? I mean, it was LA to Doha, I think it's a 16-hour flight, right? Plus the layover there. So even if you were like, for some reason you wanted to leave on a Friday, you're not landing till like Sunday night.
Yeah.
Right. At least as far as going to the continent via Doha.
So make sure you have enough travel time off.
Yeah, or sort of maybe adjust your time off to the travel. Like for me, I have a lot of time off, but I didn't pre-approve, if you will, my time off based on that date. We booked it and then I like sort of like retroactively said, okay, well, I'm going to be gone these days. So I think having that flexibility is probably, again, it's really important. So yeah.
Having the flexibility and then trying to figure out what to do with your dogs.
Yeah, we luckily have some great guys who we met on Rover. Rover is an app that you can find. You can find locals who will either board your dogs or come to your house and watch your dogs, or come to your house and just walk your dogs if you want. And so we met a couple on Rover, the app, a very long time ago. Probably when we when we got our first dog, who's now going to be 7 in a few weeks. So we met them 7 years ago, and they are fantastic. They take very good care of our dogs. Our dogs love going to their house. So we just dropped them off, and the dogs literally are jumping out of our arms to go spend the week or 2 weeks with those guys. And they are always available and take really, really, really good care of them. So I'd say Rover is a great resource if you have pets and you are traveling and wanting to, board your dogs. It is actually a lot less expensive than boarding them with like a vet or a boarding company. I think we pay maybe like $40 a night versus you might be paying like $75 or $60 a day or a night with a boarding company. So it's less expensive.
Well, that's an excellent point. Chandler wants a dog and I'm on the fence about it. And then I'm like, how am I going to go? How am I going to leave if I have to take the dog with me? My mom's like, I'm not watching the dog. She's like, I watch the kids, but I'm not watching the dog. So good to know. If we do end up getting a dog, call Rover.
Yeah, Rover app is a great resource. So yeah.
Yeah, and our pet sitter, they treat our dogs like their dogs, right? I mean, like literally no joke. When we get there, the dogs are jumping out of our arms, like, I don't care about you. Like, and sometimes they seem kind of like legit sad when we're driving home. Like, we've been running around having, because they also, I mean, this is how good it is. They're literally sending us pictures, I think at least twice a day, every day, like giving us updates about, their plan and running around and whatnot. And sometimes we swear, we're like, I don't think our dogs sleep when they're there, because when we get back, they usually like come back home and drink some water and then go lay down and like sleep like all day,
Because it's a party when mom and dad are gone.
basically.
No, seriously. And they board multiple dogs, so they're getting to socialize and play with other dogs. So they're literally playing probably all night, all day, with these other dogs. So yeah, they love going there.
So they're well taken care of while you guys are gone. So, well, I do want to thank you guys both for being here, taking time out of your busy schedules to come in and share all of your amazing experiences and what sounds like it was probably an epic adventure. I think it's going to be something that you're going to look back on fondly for many years to come. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your upcoming adventures, wherever they may take you. So,
Yeah, we actually already booked to go back to the continent. We're going to South Africa. So we'll have to tell you about that trip. Yeah.
are you really? I think this is really going to serve as like a source of inspiration for so many people, though, seriously. I think a lot of times people are intimidated by one, the amount of time that it takes to travel to get to Africa, two, going and not knowing what to expect. And again, as you mentioned, like how Africa is portrayed in the media, not knowing it's going to be something that they can get to safely. And are they going to be met by, spending all this time to get there and have, a trip that they're going to regret taking? And I've heard so many people who have been to Ghana and who've been to Kenya and, Tanzania and all these, South Africa, all these amazing places that I just feel like we're really missing out when we limit ourselves. And so thank you for showing us what's possible to get there with points and miles, but also showing us what's possible if you just decide that, I'm going to take the chance and go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll say one last point. If you can fly Q Suites, do it. The Middle Eastern Airlines know what they're doing. The service just top notch and the experience fantastic. So yes, if you can fly Q Suites, try it.
Well, I hope anyone who's listening to this takes your advice and then know that you don't have to do all these like fancy search engines to be able to book flights. You maybe even just be able to just call American Airlines or whatever the airline is of your choice and see if they can help you out with booking your war flight. So that's really good to know. And if you don't, you can always call me. I do have a booking service that I offer to people. So if you have points and you have no idea what to do with them, and you just know that, hey, I've got 1,000,000 Amex points and I wanna go to Kenya and go on a safari, call me. I'm happy to help. I really hope that anyone listening is really just as moved as I am by listening to Elliot and Nickay just recount their stories of their recent trip. If you enjoyed this episode, just do me a favor, leave a quick 5-star review. It's going to help other people find the show and be able to take advantage of this as well. Again, if you're looking to book your own trip, you can send me a message on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as well. We can set up a discovery call and discuss what your goals are. I have a website, Prescription to Travel MD. Just fill out the intake form there, and then we can get started with planning your trip. So if you're on Facebook, we have 2 different groups. There's Prescription to Travel MD that's open to anyone. It's there to really just help busy professionals who want to learn ways to optimize their travel and to be able to take amazing trips like this, flying Key Suites and, visiting Kenya. There's a Prescription to Travel MD Doctors Lounge that's specifically for docs where you'll hear about all things travel, but it'll also include information that's tailored specifically to doctors, such as opportunities for CME or continuing medical education. So thank you again, Nickay and Elliot, for joining me on the show. Thanks everyone for
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.